And apparently I'm alive. I wonder if anybody's even there. Dear, oh dear. Well, goodness gracious me. Apologies to anybody who's there for being tardy, and it's entirely not my fault. I have just got twatted by Google, YouTube. And as I attempted to log into my program here, it decided to slap me with a two-step verification process at 1 minute to 10. And unfortunately, I had turned my phone off because I'm doing a live broadcast and had to wait for it to turn back on. So it's taken me on, and then I've had to get the code resent. So I'm so sorry for being late, and that's really annoying. So I do apologize. I think I'll turn my phone off now. I think YouTube would think of a more timely way to do your verification that it's actually you, rather than just before you're about to do a live broadcast on YouTube. That's a bit tardy. Tardy. It's a bit shoddy, isn't it? So sorry about that, folks. Hi, I'm Doc Sloan, and I've just got a bit flustered by that there. Excuse me, and welcome to our Dune book club. And I totally didn't expect that at all to happen. So I do apologize. It's totally thrown me. And the fact that I was rather good and turned my phone off, and it wanted to verify through the mobile. And oh dear. But I do apologize. And we're here for our Dune book club, chapter 33. So there we go. So as you are, if people are there, say hello, folks, as you are doing. And I'll warn you, I've been doing a fair bit of tutoring today, and I think you can hear me all okay. My throat is a wee bit as usual, so I'm sure you're used to it by now. And I'll try and get some of the good old fluids in me. What a stressful way to start a broadcast. Excuse me. Now, let's see, just get myself organized, and I'll read some of your messages. There's Matt S saying, Doc. So sorry I'm late, folks, by the way. So they're saying, hi, Doc. Good to see you this evening. Good to see you too. Thought I wasn't going to make it there. There's Telios. Still evening, Doc. Howdy, Matt and Cynthia. Hi, Babs. How you doing? Chris Gibson said, evening, Doc. Hope you're well. Not too bad. Thanks, Chris. And Telios, howdy, Chris. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. Oh, got a chapter ahead, haven't we? Let me see if I got the right book. Yeah, oh goodness, I'm making some headway into this notebook at the minute. Excuse me. Always something hectic, isn't there? There we go. So I hope you're all keeping well. There's Joseph Smith saying hello. Hello, Joseph. I suppose there's a wee bit of Dune news about it at the minute, isn't there? I think they've just cast the Sisterhood TV series, and I understand Dr. Cara Kennedy's got another book coming out on Dune, about to be launched very shortly. If you check her Dune Scholar account out on Twitter, there should be details of that there. So that should be an interesting one. Well, there's all sorts going on in the world of science fiction and fantasy at the minute, isn't there? It's a busy place, and it's quite a controversial place at the minute. I think there's some good stuff and there's some not so good stuff out there. Just to let you know, folks, by the way, pardon me, there's Matt S saying hello to everyone. I've just finished this rather good book. It's pretty short. It's a novella, I would say. Ursula Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest. And I'm hoping to do something on this quite soon, actually. I've been enjoying Ursula K. Le Guin I haven't read an awful lot of her stuff, but I've been enjoying her for ages. And every time I pick up a book by her, I'm often very, very impressed. So if you're a Dune fan, I think this would appeal enormously. If you haven't read it, I'll give you the blurb on the back very quickly. When the inhabitants of a peaceful world are conquered by the bloodthirsty humans, they find themselves forced into servitude at the mercy of their brutal masters. Eventually, desperation causes them to abandon their strictures against violence and rebel against their captors. But in doing so, they have endangered the very foundations of their society For every blow against the invaders is a blow to the humanity of the Ascians, and once the killing starts, there is no turning back. mm, I think this is really good. It's a little bit messianic, and it's comes in at about 128 pages. It's a very short read, and has an excellent introduction by Ken MacLeod. But if you're a Dune fan or a fan of ecological science fiction, I suppose, this would fit very well on your bookshelf. And in particular, the nature of male violence in relation to this book is quite interesting in relation to what we're going to look at tonight in this chapter. Chapter 33 of Dune, of course. And this is the combat between Paul and Jamis. But yeah, just sorry, before we get started, anyway, highly recommend it. I'll probably do a wee video on it at some point. Let's see. Matt's saying, I'm enjoying the Dune audiobook immensely. I finally caught up and took notes for this evening. Excellent, Matt. I used to listen to some old, and I don't know what they were, but they were probably what I would call old American recordings of Dune, of the Dune books, and I think I got them off Pirate Bay a long time ago, and they weren't that good. But I understand that the new ones, that there's good production, etc. in them. So I'm a big fan of audiobooks, especially going to sleep to them. So I must see if I can get hold of the new Dune ones. Male violence should always be reported to your postal inspector. Yes, indeed. My favorite one is naval warfare, Matt. All out engagement between belly buttons is a favorite of mine. That one, I like that. Very good. Yes, indeed. So yeah, but yeah, if I would say if you haven't read this book and you are a Dune fan, there's a lot to compare and contrast, if you like. But and this is a Hugo Award winner, by the way. Let me see, what's the year of publication? I believe is 1972, according to this book. So there we go. But excellent, it's a wee bit different than the Ursula K. Le Guin that I'd say this one reads a wee bit different, certainly than the last one that I read was The Lathe of Heaven. And it had a kind of, I don't know how I would put it, sort of a kind of a bit of a similar kind of feel that you would find in maybe a Philip K. Dick novel, if you see what I mean. But yeah, this was particularly interesting, I thought. And in the introduction, it actually discusses, I think, a tribe that somebody contacted her, I think, post writing this book and said, "Oh, did you base these people in your book on these real people?" Let me just see if I can find it. The Senoi, that was it. She was asked if she had modeled the Ascians of the story upon the Senoi people of Malaysia. And just in the introduction, the Senoi were a people whose culture includes and is indeed substantially based upon a deliberate training in and use of the dream. So a really interesting little book. I'll not say too much more about it to spoil it, but highly recommend it if anybody wants to check it out. There's Bojack Harkness saying, "Hey all, hey Bojack, how's it going?" There we go. I think I've been catching up on my correspondence a wee bit on comments on the station, by the way. So if I haven't got to yet, folks, I'm getting there. I think I've just a couple more to get through. But let's hit chapter 33. This is a long one, and I would say it's kind of I suppose it's an action scene and it's dialogue heavy. And it's quite an intense little scene, I think, actually. And we get a good building of tension. We get shifts of point of view, etc., etc. And ultimately, I suppose we get a contrast to Paul in the character of Jamis. And later on, whenever we come to, I suppose, the combat between Paul and Jamis, we can compare it to the combat between Phaedrautha and the supposedly drugged Atreides soldier in the gladiatorial ring that we'll come to in a few chapters. Excuse me. and how much they're very much different. So let's start with our epigraph, shall we? I'll get a wee drink before we go. Right, here we go. My father, the Padishah Emperor, was 72, yet looked no more than 35 the year he encompassed the death of Duke Leto and gave Arrakis back to the Harkonnens. That's a good one for the casting of, I suppose, Christopher Walken, isn't it, as the Emperor? I wonder if they're going to make him look young. But our Emperor should look about 35 years of age. Excuse me, my throat's appalling tonight. He seldom appeared in public wearing other than a Sardaukar uniform and a Burseg's black helmet with the imperial lion and gold upon its crest. The uniform was an open reminder of where his power lay. He was not always that blatant, though. When he wanted, he could radiate charm and sincerity, but I often wonder in these latter days if anything about him was as it seemed. I think now he was a man fighting constantly to escape the bars of an invisible cage. You must remember that he was an emperor, fatherhead of a dynasty that reached back into the dimmest history, but we denied him a legal son. Pardon me? Was this not the most terrible defeat a ruler ever suffered? My mother obeyed her sister's superiors where the Lady Jessica disobeyed. Which of them was the stronger? History already has answered. In my father's house by the Princess Irulan. Excuse me. So it's an interesting little epigraph. Even the old soup pot saying even the old high soup pot. Machiavelli's Matt S says Machiavelli's The Prince says you have to follow certain structures such as imposing fear, but few people ever talk about the other ingredient that's needed for good rule, which is luck. Machiavelli's The Prince. Oh goodness, I haven't read that since I was young. There we go. Mr. Machiavelli, a long time ago. Yeah. It's a funny one, isn't it? Luck is absolutely a factor, though, in terms of what you're saying, Matt. I'm not a fan of Machiavelli, by the way. But I read stuff like that. I read old books. But yeah, that's one I would like to read again, actually. But I've always thought Machiavelli, I don't know what you think about him, Matt, but I thought he was, compared to the Romans, I think he's a bit naive. The Prince says you have to follow certain structures such as imposing fear, but few people ever talk about the other ingredient needed for good luck. Have you ever heard the thing about Machiavelli's The Prince, Matt? That it's he says that luck is crucial. Nobody talks about that part. That if you consider it, there's an idea that if you consider the book as a piece of advice. Let me see. I haven't done. Oh, I happen to have some of my books are completely badly organized. It's just all these weird random ones are over here. Let me see. It's one with the translation by George Bull. And it's pretty specific to its time and place, isn't it? We're talking about all sorts of how a prince must act to win honor, all of this kind of thing. How flatterers must be shunned. I think it's it's an interesting thing. The idea that was put ahead was that as much as it's towards you heard it was his job interview for finding a patron. I suppose in the sense that it was, how would we put it? You know the way 1984, you can either look at 1984 as a warning or as a manual. It's that kind of thing. I'm not a scholar on this kind of stuff. I just read these things out of curiosity, and this book's quite old, I suppose. In fact, I've got horrific stains on it, but and it's quite badly damaged. So it's moved. I think I read this in the early 90s. Excuse me. But yeah, luck, the random, I suppose. Depends on what you think of it. Very specific. On time places, warning on mercenaries is very timely bound. Mercenaries are interesting. I find mercenaries very interesting. Yeah, look, I don't know when you put if you read something like Machiavelli's The Prince, and then I suppose what can we think? Well, there's other books that we can look at in terms of how we should rule. But look here, we'll digress. Yes, very no silver, no Swiss guards. What is it now? I'm trying. You made me think of a quote, Chris, and I'm wondering: is it about the Swiss or about the Swedes? No, it's about the Swiss. What is it? I'll fight for anybody except for the Swiss. Isn't that what the neatness scares the hell out of me? Does anybody know where that's from? Will we make it as a quiz? Bring me my Switzers from Hamlet. What's the other one? 20 Noble Switzer. Matt, do you know that one? Is from Arms and the Man, George Bernard Shaw, isn't it? What is it? I'll fight for anybody except the Swiss. Neatness scares the hell out of me, sir. Have you? It's a film, and it's about mercenaries. If I'm remembering the quote correctly. So if you can guess what the film is, I'll let you know, and I'll tell you by the end if you don't know. It's a good film. So, well, I suppose the other thing we could ask very quickly, guys, is if we look at the epigraph, let's ask the question. My mother obeyed. Well, it asks, was this not most the terrible defeat a ruler ever suffered? Pardon me. I suppose being defeated by, the process of childbirth and by being denied a son. But the other question is, my mother obeyed her sister's superiors, where the Lady Jessica disobeyed. Which of them was the stronger? History has already answered. So I wonder what we think of that. Who was the stronger? Is it is it the person who followed her orders? Is it the wife of Shaddam IV? Or is it Jessica who disobeyed? And again, this book's in my father's house. And I think the implication is that if this is Princess Irulan writing propaganda for the Atreides, if you like, that the stronger is Lady Jessica. But I'm wondering what you think. It's not Dogs of War. Nope. Nah. Good film. I assumed it was Jessica that was the stronger since the Crino dynasty is overthrown, but I acknowledge it takes great restraint to suppress oneself for a cause. It is the wild geese, Chris. Well done. Yes, indeed. It's when they're recruiting the various individuals, and that's what one of them says. And then I think, is it the guy that asks for he wants a loan for a haircut, and he knows a lady barber that charges by the inch. So. is the guy that says that I think neatness scares the hell out of him, but it's the Swiss he's talking about. He'll fight anybody except the Swiss, I think. Yeah, I love The Wild Geese. Great film. Excuse me. I suppose there's not too many good films about mercenaries, is there? Jessica was the stronger since the Crino dynasty is overthrown. But we have to assume, Matt, this is where I was going, that the wife of Shaddam IV denied him a son, and by doing so, for the Bene Gesserit, destroys the Crino dynasty, if you see what I mean. Well, it doesn't really, does it? Well, yeah, it pretty much does. Of course it does. The most terrible defeat a ruler ever suffered. Yeah. No, it's just one for speculation, because it's, I suppose, like Irulan writing this about her mother. I think it's a bit, there's a bit of a vagary there, perhaps. Excuse me. Right. Okay. So we start off in this chapter awakening to Fremen life in the cave, and I suppose we're going to learn a fair bit about the Fremen in some ways. And we don't get long to acclimatize really to the setting and the scene before things erupt. First with, I suppose, fear and posturing, and then into violence. So we're told that Jessica awakened in cave darkness and could sense the Fremen stir around her. We're talking about her inner time sense. It'll soon be night outside, and that they're shielded from the desert, and that the plastic hoods that trap their body moisture within the space. Sorry, let me just have a wee look at this. The cave remained in blackness, shielded from the desert by the plastic hoods that trap their body moisture within this space. So we hear this phrase now and then within Dune: permitted themselves, permitted herself, etc. And here we go. It's she realized that she permitted herself the utterly relaxing sleep of great fatigue. So they've been exhausted, and that by doing so, I suppose, she's unconsciously assessed the fact that Stilgar's security within the trip is acceptable. It's okay. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone into such a deep sleep. So we get a little bit of how the Fremen kit works here, by the way, as well. We're told that she turned in her hammock, which is fashioned from a robe, and she slipped her feet to the floor into her desert boots. Excuse me. And we're told that she must remember to fashion boots slip fashion to help my still suits pumping action. So many things to remember. So I suppose the Fremen thinking beginning here, and we're seeing how the Fremen operate, how they live with the Frem kit, if you like. We've got this hammock that's been sort of formed out of the robe. We're going to learn a little bit more about it, just the little tiny details of how it works, and it's quite interesting. And so that this is awakening, I suppose. And we're told that she can still taste the morning meal, the morsel of bird flesh and grain bound within a leaf, with spice honey. And I put a wee question mark there. I was wondering, how does that work? Where are they getting the honey from? And where are the bees? Etc. And I suppose we don't hear much about insects on Arrakis at all. Possibly imported and just mixed with spice. So it occurs that her time is flipped here. Night is the day of activity and day is the time of rest. So that's essentially the Fremen clock, if you like. And the reason night conceals, night is safest. Excuse me. So a little bit more of this. We're told she unhooked her robe from its hammock pegs in a rock alcove, fumbled with the fabric in the dark until she found the top and slipped into it. And her thoughts slipped to how to get a message out to the Bene Gesserit. They have to be told of the two strays in the Iraqian sanctuary. So her thoughts are always kind of at some point aiming towards the Bene Gesserit. This is following on from the previous chapter. I suppose that we've had a lot of thoughts about the Missionaria Protectiva and how it's going on here. And also, I suppose, and it's going to come into play here, we noted in the previous chapter that there's something wrong with the Missionaria Protectiva on Arrakis. Someone's mucked around with it a bit. And so as much as there are things in place, they're not quite exactly as they should have been, and it looks like somebody has exploited this. So my personal opinion on that is that's part of Kynes, if you like. Cynthia says, in chapter 30, Kynes imagines his father saying that no more terrible disaster can happen to a people than to fall into the hands of a hero. Maybe a hero is an adopted child's son for an infertile people. That's an interesting way of putting it. Excuse me. That's a very interesting way of putting it. If you actually look at a lot of the myths, often the hero is, I suppose from a different land, the person that comes to his new kingdom, if you like. Um, Within a lot of the Greek stories, for example, it's often an adopted or abandoned child, for example. And often the child is the result of, I suppose, um, divine intercourse, whether wanted or not. Excuse me. But I kind of get what you're saying, Cynthia. In sense of the infertile people, it's a bit. What I get from that is it's a bit like the land and the king are one, if you know what I mean. Within decay, and I suppose that's that old idea of that. I suppose, isn't it, the earth goddess and the sun king, if you know what I mean. But an adopted child son for an infertile people brings new life, brings new blood, shakes it up, brings new genes, this kind of thing. Well, the old word, yeah, I suppose. Maybe a hero is an adopted child son for an infertile people. With the purpose of what? Making them fertile again, I suppose. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And as I said, we often have, I suppose, nature and natural affinities with the hero, and particularly the Arthurian thing. If you think about it, it's a very common association. Excuse me, in that nature is in decay. A lot of the King Arthur myth, I suppose, if you think about, if you go back to sort of some of the Anglo-Saxon literature and stuff and things like that, and oh, hang on, in particular, oh, I hit something by accident there, and I don't know what I did. Bear with me. Goodness, I hope you can all see me and hear me. I clicked something and I've no idea what. There we go. I've lost my full screen, I think. In fact, I've lost you guys. Hang on. Where are we? I've lost your. Don't have access. Don't have access. Goodness, I've lost your comments, folks. And I don't know how to get them back. Let me see. Cancel. Right, what's happened? Sorry, bear with me a wee second. I've lost everything. I don't know what's going on. Folks, I've lost all of you, and I don't know what's quite happened here. So I'm going to come back out and come back in if that's okay. Really apologize about this. Bear with me a wee second. Dear, oh dear. Hang on.